5 years ago, I was done as a teacher. I quit my job. I was going to be an Uber driver. I was like anything but teaching. But a good friend over at French Prairie, George Roberts, said, "Hey, you got to at least come check this place out." And it was one of those, like, you know, you talk about, you know, like relationships where you like fall in love at first sight. Like for me, Woodburn was that. You know, it was the people, it was the community. Instantly, I moved here. I live 8 minutes from the high school, and you know, on a daily basis, I'm just inspired, and you know, I definitely walk away with way more hope on a daily basis because of the kids I get to work with. They're inspiring, and I think one of the challenges we have is to really try to make sure they understand just how smart, talented, and capable they are. And so a lot of our work is really trying to buoy the academic, intellectual, and scholarly self-esteem in kids, because they are incredibly talented, but for whatever reason, they don't always believe that. So those are some of the forces we're kind of trying to push back against, and help illuminate their talents and abilities in ways that they start to believe, they start to see it, they start to know just how richly talented and capable they are. I struggled. I wasn't a writer. You know, I had that, you know, grew up with, you know, those red pens that basically made me feel like I couldn't write. So I ran from it. Even though I was a great student, I didn't take honors English. I didn't take any of those advanced classes. When I got to college, I didn't take a writing class. I was afraid to write. You know, all this time I wanted to be a writer. I wrote my first book when I was 2. I have this book that I wrote when I was 2, right? So I grew up, and I think everybody naturally is a storyteller. You know, that's how we navigate the world, and for whatever reason, you know, we hear these voices that tell us that you're not good at it, or that you struggle with it, and then you run from it. And so it's like, how do we make sure that every kid knows, one, their story matters, it's worth telling, it's worth sharing, and then hopefully along the way I can start giving them some of the skills and abilities to say it with power and grace and beauty. I guess I'm a bit different, like, as an educator in some ways, in that I do whatever they do. So if I'm gonna ask them to write an essay, I write an essay. If I'm gonna ask them to tell their narrative, I get up and tell mine. And so I think that you know, we strive to create an environment where empathy is a big part of what we are and who we are, and how we try to understand the world from perspectives of their own. At the same time, trying to make sure that everybody feels really valued for who they are, and that's been a process. I certainly wasn't there when I first got here in Woodburn, and I really struggled. But I had lots of great parents, and I had lots of great students who were willing to have really honest conversations with me and kind of reveal some of my blind spots. And I'm really indebted to those people who had patience with me. You know, and I'm proud of the fact that even 18 years into my career, I'm constantly striving to improve and keep working on my craft, and keep trying to build my understanding of who kids are and what's important to them and what's important to their families as well. So as a teacher, you have a lot of hard days, and it was one of those. And so it was really humbling in the moment, and I didn't expect it because, you know, oftentimes I find myself really worrying about all the students that are struggling. I'm not making a difference, or I feel like I'm not. So it was, it's one of those, right when you need it, you got something really nice just to remind you that all that hard work does matter and does make a difference. It was a really interesting process, because part of it is you get nominated, you don't know who nominated you, but then you have a chance to write some essays that really talk about you as an educator and what you believe and what is important. And that process was really good for that self-reflection. Something I try to do a lot, but to be able to force myself to sit down and really think about what really matters was really critical. Kind of reinforce some of my core beliefs and core values that, for me, my students really need an experience that I call mirror, window, and bridge. So you think about, they got to see themselves, so they have to be able to look in the mirror and see themselves in our classroom. But they also need to be able to look through a window and see the lives of other people. And I think then the The challenging part is then to build those bridges, especially, you know, those bridges that bring people who may seem different on the surface together and find commonalities and better understanding. And so to really think and reflect on that's been really powerful. I wasn't going to be a teacher. My dad was a teacher. He was like one of those iconic teachers. You'd walk down the street and everybody would be like, Mr. Sanderson, Mr. Sanderson. And he was, you know, he was beloved and he was brilliant. And so because of that, I was never going to be a teacher. So I ran from it and I did all sorts of other things. You know, I drove truck, I delivered produce, I was a waiter, I worked in restaurants, I led biking and hiking tours. I did absolutely anything I could except for teach. But over and over, the things that I kind of gravitated towards kept coming back to kids. So I worked at a homeless shelter for young people in Eugene, and then I did conservation work with kids in residential programs. We spent 24/7 for 6 weeks together, building hiking trails and planting trees. And so I was hooked. You know, I knew it's who I was and what I wanted to do. So I finally kind of bit the bullet, went back to school and got my teaching license. And I always thought I was going to be an alternative high school teacher. That's what, you know, how I started. And so it's been a kind of a crazy path to doing lots of different things to get here. But through all that travel and time, I think, you know, one thing I found in Woodburn is home.